Have you taken the time to focus on your own well-being or that of someone close to you? In a world that moves at the speed of light, it's easy to forget to tune into our emotional health. Here with ways to better connect with self and others is Brian Miller, the connection magician. Voila, abracadabra.
Abracadabra, thanks so much for having me. It took 1 second for a magic joke. I think that's a new record.
Yeah.
It's perfect. We're in good shape.
I'm good for that. I'm good for that. Well, you know what? September is National Self-Care Awareness Month, and I guess there is a level of magic that goes into that because it doesn't come very easily to people.
No, it really doesn't. I don't know if you've heard the term the loneliness epidemic, but I always start with this question. How often do you feel truly seen, heard, understood, valued, acknowledged by another human as a human and not merely a means to an end? It's incredibly rare for people these days to really feel like that, even from their closest friends and family. And there's a reason for it. The Global Health Service Organization, Cigna, they termed this the loneliness epidemic. They did a huge landmark study on loneliness and discovered that 2 out of every 3 Americans, 2 out of 3 feels lonely or isolated on a regular basis. And that is a big deal because medically speaking, I don't know if you know this, Layla, but loneliness it's as deadly as smoking 15 cigarettes per day.
Goodness gracious. Well, you know, when we talk about some of our elders in the community who are isolated, who do not have family, they suffer from dire physical and emotional consequences. Their health declines. So it's really no different in any of us.
That's right. That's such an interesting parallel there that I really haven't heard too many people talking about. This shouldn't be such a surprise. As you've just indicated, we know this already, but I think it's younger people are not used to thinking about it in the same way. And for me, a lot of it has been a problem of reframing, right? Because that study was pre-pandemic. That was already happening before the pandemic, before social distancing. And I think a lot of the problem is that when we got into this lockdown state, we started to think of human connection as something we could no longer do because we think human connection is something that only happens when we share a physical space. But that's simply not true. Human connection is merely the ability to make other people feel heard, understood, and valued. And we can do that. You and I are doing that right now.
Absolutely.
It's totally possible. Just a different mindset.
It's true. I always say communication, conversation, which leads me to my next question. Now, because this study was done pre-pandemic, so this is before all of us were quarantined and all of that stuff, but what has been around pre-COVID is social media. Now, social media, on the one hand, is something that's supposed to be connecting people, helping you get to meet new friends. But what I've also observed is that it's also a way for people to get lost in their own world and away from the people around them. So, do you find that it's had a detrimental effect? Is there a healthier relationship that people can have with social media?
Yeah. Do you have 4 hours? It's a big question. Yeah. So here's the short answer. The short answer is social media is a tool. It's a medium, no different than any other tool or medium. We can choose how to use it. And the key to social media is that those negative effects you're talking about is mostly when we're consuming it passively, when we're letting this wash of this isolated perspective where we get into these kind of bubbles, right? The algorithm just keeps giving us only more of what we already believe, that we can intentionally use social media to pursue other perspectives and to engage with people, not to try to make our point, but engage with genuine curiosity with people whose point of views we don't understand, to ask meaningful and relevant questions and seek where do we agree? Because we agree with more people more often than we realize because we get hung up on the few things we don't agree on. And we can intentionally pursue the things that we do. And everything changes when you do that.
Absolutely. Well, Brian, this is a good place to take a break. So when we come back, I want to talk about why self-care is a group activity. We're going to do that in 2 minutes. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. We've been chatting with Brian Miller. He is called the Connection Magician, and we've been talking about how September is Self-Care Awareness Month. And you say that self-care is a group activity. How so?
So one of the things that my mentor always says is all of us are smarter than any of us. And to which I would add, all of us are stronger than any of us. And I think it's really important to remember that, as we've been talking, in the digital age, isolation is a mindset. We've actually never been luckier in terms of human connection than the age we're currently in. To be in a global pandemic in an age where we can literally connect to, communicate with in real time any human being on planet Earth at any given moment, that is an incredibly lucky opportunity that we have. And so self-care, self-responsibility, these have become big industries, big talking points. And I agree, we should take care of ourselves. We should take responsibility for our own well-being. But what I think gets lost in this conversation is we don't live in the world by ourselves. Right. We exist in relation to other people. And that's why I say that self-care is a group activity. The best form of caring for yourself is caring for others. It's reciprocal and it ripples.
And you say that there are myriad ways in which we can connect in this day and age, and that's absolutely true. How do we do so on a deep level?
Yeah, so one of the things that you and I have been talking about is reframing, and here's another reframe for you. We need to reframe human connection as something you expect of others to a gift that you give to others. I think a lot of times what we do is we feel lonely, we feel isolated, we sit by ourselves in our room and we just wish that somebody would reach out to us. We're yearning for that connection, but we're waiting. And when you ask people, well, why don't you reach out to those people? They say, well, I don't want to bother them. I don't want to be annoying. I don't want to be obnoxious. You think, well, don't you think those people are sitting there thinking the exact same thing? We're not that different. So why not be the person that offers the gift of human connection? What better gift to give somebody in an isolated age?
Yeah, so to be the one to take that first step and to connect with someone that you don't understand. So we did touch on this a little bit ago. Mm-hmm. Just because you don't necessarily agree with a few of the things someone says, there's much more common ground than we actually think. So how do you suggest that people put some of those personal preferences aside in order to better connect with someone?
Well, that's it. So there's a technique that's called perspective taking. Perspective taking. It's just what it sounds like. It's the ability to see the world from the point of view of another person. This is what my viral TEDx talk, How to Magically Connect with Anyone, was all about. And perspective taking is really the key to connecting with someone that you don't understand, because when you're doing perspective taking, you're asking meaningful, relevant questions. You're listening to the answers, but you're listening to understand. You're not listening to respond or reply, right? We do this a lot. Somebody says something and we instantly realize there's something we want to say, a story we want to tell, a point we want to make. So we just tune them out, and in our heads we're just going, remember that thing you want to say, remember that thing you want to say, remember that thing you want to say. And we just wait till their lips stop moving, and then we jump in and say our thing. We've missed everything else that they've said.
Yes.
And all they hear is us yelling at them. And that's why everyone's yelling past each other right now.
That's
so
right.
When you listen to understand, you ask meaningful questions, you're going to have a better chance at finding that common ground. You may never agree with them, but at least understand. That's the starting point.
I think it's also called empathy, right?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. Empathy is very similar. It's related to perspective taking, and it's different in one core way. And it's such an astute question. Almost nobody thinks to ask that. So thank you for this, Layla. Perspective taking is a skill. It's a tool. It's got nothing to do with your emotional state. Empathy is feeling what someone else is feeling as if it were happening to you. They're kind of two sides of the same coin. You can do perspective taking without empathy, and you can do empathy without perspective taking. But it's very hard to train somebody to be more empathic. Mm-hmm. In other words, it's hard for me. I'm a speaker, I'm a consultant, I run workshops. I can't really train someone to feel something more or
right.
different or better. That's a therapist's job. And my wife is actually a therapist, so I know that that's a job that exists. Yeah. But I get an hour, I get 2 hours, I get 30 minutes. And in that time, I can teach somebody the skill of perspective taking, which is something that once you learn how to do, you can practice, hone, develop, and continue to get better at it. It's a growth commodity.
That's wonderful. Brian, it has been so fascinating talking with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.